Welcome back to Business Live once again. But there's been a lot of talk today. It's all about the media budget review. But also we have news-making rounds around the world, and we have some local and international stories. So let's go for the summaries for the day.
To support the inclusive finance entity's ongoing expansion strategy, AFB Ghana has increased its bond issue by 2/3 to a total of 300 million Ghana cedis. AFB's bonds have managed to secure a solid rating for the last year thanks to AFB's solid track record and positive business potential for the medium term. Upon introduction of a new digital platform to check vehicle insurance registration at the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Authority, the motor vehicle insurance subsector of the insurance industry is set to realize an increase in the uptake of insurance in the country. This was disclosed by the head of supervision at the National Insurance Commission, Mr. Seth Ishan. Under this project, government is expected to launch a digital platform that will link the data of insurance companies to the DVLA to check vehicles that have been insured in real time. Nigeria unveiled a new national carrier on Wednesday, nearly 15 years after the previous state-run airline Nigerian Airways ceased operations. The new airline will be known as Nigeria Air. The Nigerian Minister of State for Aviation announced and unveiled the new branding and livery of the airline at the ongoing International Air Show in the UK. Comcast said it will no longer pursue a takeover of 21st Century's Fox film and television assets, leaving Disney as the sole bidder. The US cable giant said that it will now concentrate on attempting to buy the UK pay TV broadcaster Sky instead. Disney recently raised its offer for Fox Entertainment operations to $71 billion, surpassing Comcast's $65 billion bid. Meanwhile, Comcast has been battling with Rupert Murdoch's 21st Century Fox to buy Sky.
So those were summaries read by Sheila Tamaklo. Daryl, that story about Nigeria bringing back their airline. Where is our airline?
Yes, it reminds me of Ghana Airways.
Ghana Airways.
The Ghana airline. But I know that there are currently talks in place to get partners so that we can bring back the national carrier. The last one we are eating inside of the airport.
Anyway, I'll be back later during the bulletin. We'll be talking about the mid-year budget review. A lot of confusion out there. We'll be delving into that. But first, we go back to Daryl for the stories of the day.
Well, the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, says there will be no increment in the value-added tax VAT. That's contrary to earlier speculations that it could be increased. Presenting the mid-year budget review in Parliament today, he categorically stated the VAT rate will still remain at 12.5%. However, the Finance Minister noted the National Health Insurance Levy and the Get Fund Levy have been restructured into a straight tax. Among others, Ken Ofori-Atta also proposed tax on luxury vehicles and increased personal income tax to 35% for persons receiving incomes above 10,000 cedis.
Beyond this, Mr. Speaker, any taxes should be to elicit socially desirable outcomes, such as a better environment in this regard. I would like to inform the House, Mr. Speaker, that there will be no increase in VAT. So the measures for this year to ensure that we meet our fiscal deficit target of 4.5%, to ensure that we exit the IMF program. Mr. Speaker, we are converting the national health insurance of 2.5% to a straight levy of 2.5%. Mr. Speaker, we are converting the Get Fund value-added tax rate of 2.5% to a straight levy of 2.5%. Mr. Speaker, VAT will thus be maintained at 12.5%. Mr. Speaker, they are imposing a luxury we are imposing a luxury vehicle tax with capacity of 3 liters and above. Mr. Speaker, we are reviewing personal income tax to include an additional band of 10,000 cedis and above per month at a rate of 35%. Mr. Speaker, we are intensifying the compliance measures to make sure we collect the taxes that are due us. Mr. Speaker, as part of efforts to improve revenue performance, we will intensify tax compliance and plug existing revenue leakages. Investigations we have taken show inbound leakages on goods arriving in the country, significant outstanding tax debts, suspense regimes in the areas of the country, significant outstanding tax debts, suspense regimes in the area of warehousing, transit trade, and free zones, and tax audit issues such as limited coverage, low auditor productivity, and low audit yield.
The finance minister also touched on crude oil exports and its contribution to the economy. He says the value of crude oil exported for the first half of the year was $1,908.22 million compared to $1,033.35 million recorded in the same period in 2017. Now, as part of the mid-year budget review, Mr. Ofori-Atta noted the increase in the value of oil export was as a result of effects of crude oil prices on the world market.
Total realized inflows from petroleum receipts amounted to $2.1 billion, 36.3% higher than the program estimate of $1.5 billion. This includes corporate income tax arrears from oil of about $373.5 million for the period. Mr. Speaker, the shortfall in non-oil tax revenue is mainly as a result of lower than anticipated reported MDA's retention from non-tax receipts. It is important, however, to note that the modest inflow from the yield from NDA's IGF capping of about 5.6 million or 7.2% of the program target of the Ghana 77.7 million was realized for that period. Mr. Speaker, total government expenditure including arrears clearance amounted to 23.8 billion, 9.8% of GDP, and constitutes 38.3% of the annual budget target. Although the outturn was 3.2% lower than the program target of 24.6 billion, moderate slippages were observed in the wage bill, 279.6 million, and goods and services, 134.1 million.
Well, in another development, government says it has contracted experts to work along with the staff of GRA to conduct a forensic audit of companies in priority sectors of the economy. According to the finance minister, the authority will undertake an audit of multinational enterprises to ensure that the right taxes are levied and collected. You're watching Business Live. We have analysis coming up.
Welcome back to Business Live. So, ahead of the mid-year budget presentation, there were speculations that the VAT was going to go up, but that was not the case. Instead, we have some new taxes being introduced. The proposed tax on luxury vehicles and the National Insurance Levy and the GET Fund have also been boxed into a straight levy. What does these really mean? I've been joined by an economist from Data Bank, Courage Mate, to help us delve into this. Courage, thanks so much for joining us. First of all, what is your assessment of the mid-year budget presentation?
Well, I saw a fiscal framework that was on the knife's edge, so that if we didn't do these adjustments, we would very likely miss our targets. And the implication of that is that it would have been difficult to sustain investor confidence, because remember that we would have exited the IMF program next year.
Okay.
And so if you miss your target upon exiting the IMF program, which should have made you achieve your target, and you were missing it at the end, then investors would be very apprehensive about what the outlook holds. And so it was necessary for these adjustments to be done in order to keep the framework on track for us to meet our targets at the end of the program.
So were your expectations met?
I think I would say the government did very well in trying to minimize the impact of the tax measures. So broadly speaking, to some extent, yes, to some extent, no.
That was perhaps because there was a lot of noise before because of the VAT that we were expecting to go up.
Yep.
And so they were a bit cautious. Is that the understanding you got from?
That is absolutely what I got. And again, if you look at the way they spread the tax burden, they try to impose a lot more of the burden at the higher end of the income ladder than on the lower end. I think where most of the lower end of the income ladder will feel it is where the NHIL, the health insurance levy, and the get fund levy has been decoupled from value added tax and will now be applied as a strict
yes,
levy.
I was coming to that. I want us to narrow on these three. First of all, before we came on, I was trying to get the meaning of straight levy. What's the difference between VAT and straight levy?
I think basically what they are trying to say, because it's not a common term in the economics of
Have you come across it before?
I haven't. I must admit I'm hearing it for the first time.
Okay.
So, but if you try to understand where we are coming from and what they are trying to do, at the time we had the health insurance levy of 2.5 and the get fund levy of 2.5, we had it under the value added tax system.
Okay.
In that particular situation, these levies would be applied on value added.
Added to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, if you take them out of the value added components, then what it means is that you are going to apply them on a bigger base in order to rake in more revenue. So what they are trying to do is to decouple them from the value added component so that you leave the actual value added tax of 12.5% and then take those 2.5% each for get fund and health levy.
I want to understand. Let's take this paper, for instance.
Okay.
I have this paper, and the value added is what is printed on this paper. So initially, I was paying for the printing on the paper, which was the value added of the 2.5 we were initially paying.
Yeah.
Now, they are saying that the production of this paper and then the printing is what I'm going to pay for. Does that mean that we are going to pay more than what we used to pay in the past?
Yes. I mean, when you do your calculations, you definitely have to pay more because now the 2.5 in each case will be applied on the final value and not the value added.
Which is more than what we used to pay.
Exactly.
So is that a smart way of saying we are not increasing VAT, but we'll find a way of putting it somewhere for you to pay?
Yes, in the difficult situation, I think that's a smart way of handling it so that you don't elevate the concerns because mind you, every tax you impose can also have inflationary consequences and productivity consequences.
Wow.
So they were trying to manage these two consequences, and I think that this is a smart way of managing it.
Quite interesting. Let's narrow it down to the personal income tax. I think that's quite a huge percentage, 35% of what you earn, you're going to pay now as a tax. How does that work? So, I mean, people are going to give their salary virtually too. Yeah,
and on a lighter note, when it was done, I think a friend of mine told me that, yes, your dream of becoming a CEO has been botched. But the truth of the matter is that they are trying to spread the burden so that those who have bigger muscle should be able to carry more in the short term, because there are other measures that are being introduced. I would wish they accelerate those measures of broadening the tax base, enforcing compliance. Those ones are very key.
But is the 35% not too much?
Well, I mean, jumping from, initially we had it at the limit of, I think, something around 3,214, 25%.
Okay.
From that level and above, you pay 25%. Now it's from 10,000 and above, you pay 35%. Is it too much? Is it not too much? if you don't get that coming through, what will be the consequences on macroeconomic stability?
Okay.
And what will be the impact on the real value of that 10,000 you would have had in your pocket? So I think that in the short term, this is how the government is trying to spread the burden, so that those who have the bigger muscle at the higher end, including luxury vehicle owners,
Yes.
will be able to contribute a lot more into the kitty.
Yeah,
my own issue
Okay.
is that we have a lot of potential to rake in more. Now, I feel like we needed to have introduced something like a sunset clause, where we give ourselves a certain timeline within which, by the time we start reaping the benefits of broadening the tax base, maybe we can scale back some of these higher taxes of the 35% and whatnot.
I see. That brings us to the proposed tax on luxury vehicles. You mentioned it earlier on. And so for me, I find it quite worrying, because the ordinary Ghanaian or the middle class Ghanaian, we don't normally bring in 3.0 capacity vehicles. So we have ministers who use the V8 and that. So I know they also have some tax waivers on bringing vehicles into the. So who exactly are they going to be paying this new tax on the vehicle, the luxury vehicles?
Well, Sandra, it will surprise you that there are private individuals who even have bigger capacity. People drive Tundra on our roads. The roads of Accra are better than what we have in my village, but you have people driving Tundra, which is like a moving house. People like that are the target.
Okay.
Now, I think you raise an important issue of the politicians themselves. Are they going to be excluded?
Okay.
I'll be disappointed if they are. If you look at the budget, we lose about 2 billion cedis every year to tax exemptions. If these guys contribute to the kitty, we would have so much to go to government for them.
Is that supposed to, is that what you're saying? Does it mean that it's not clear as to whether they are part of it or they are not part?
From my perspective, I cannot claim to know whether they are part or they are not part. I would have to investigate more. But my answer to that would be, if they are not part, then they have to be part.
The whole idea of having this tax on the 3.0 engine and above vehicle, is it really a laudable idea?
Well, you know, these kind of vehicles, first of all, they are luxury vehicles, right? And luxury items, normally, they are not necessities, right? So it's because you feel you want a certain level of comfort, and comfort comes with premium. So then you have to pay some premium. Having said that, these vehicles also impose a lot of demand on fuel consumption, so that if government has to spend so much to keep prices at a certain level, you are benefiting. You know, because when price on the world market goes up and OMCs are supposed to reflect it, we hear there are times when government will take part of the price stabilization levy to limit the upward adjustment. Now, if you consume so much, then it's pressure on the kitty as well.
Interesting, Carrie. Thanks so much for giving us those updates. And also, we've already been complaining about import duties. We'll wait to see how it's going to pan out. But Daryl has some reactions to what has been happening today in Parliament.
And tell you what, Sandy, there'll be different definitions of what a luxury vehicle is from today. I can bet you, I can tell you that for sure. But let's get reactions from both sides of Parliament after the presentation of the media budget. My colleague, Georgia Faye, spoke with the Deputy Minister of Finance, Kweku Kwarteng, and the Chair of the Public Accounts Committee, James Kluche Aveji.
Additionally, the National Health Insurance Levy has been administered as a value-added tax. That is to say, when value is added between transactions, there's value added, then the rate will incident on the value added. Now, what we're saying is that we're moving away from that and incidenting the tax on the transaction itself. So yes, it is going to bring government a little more revenue, but the impact is far lower, and we did make this choice over increasing VAT, because we considered that the impact of this would be far lower on low consumers and on consumers generally than it would be if we were to impose additional VAT, which is why we opted for that option, and I am happy that than increasing VAT. We considered that it was a better option, and I'm happy at the response we have got. Thank you so much. What is the question?
I want to ask the Minister a question. What is the difference between converting the 2.5% VAT on GET Fund, that is GET Fund, and then 2.5% NHL from the current situation to a levy. Can you explain the meaning and what will be the impact, the effects on the people of Ghana?
I think he was not here, so I'll pardon him. I'll pardon him. I actually did explain, and if you're not clear, you come to my office. I'll give you further explanation.
Because I have a question. I have a question further to that. That is what I'm asking you.
The answer to that is that the current arrangement puts the levies on the value added. Per the new intervention, the levy is going to be on a transaction. As I have indicated, that would mean that the consumer would pay a little more than they have traditionally paid. But as I indicated again, we have weighed that option against the option of also a straightforward VAT, and we have come to the conclusion that this is friendlier to the consumer, and that is why we have put it across. We are upfront about that.
Yeah, and I'm happy about the answer because it is increasing the VAT through a back door. Simple. That's an explanation. The consumer pay more. If you increase the VAT by 1%, the consumer pays more. If you now apply the 2.5% on the transaction and not the value added, he pays more. So the consumer at the end is the one who loses. For that matter, is increasing VAT through a back door. I'm happy about the answer.
But what you say is that to pay for all.
No, it is a strategy of implementing a tax measure so that it has minimal impact. I recognize. What do you?
I can tell you that the impact is more than even increasing the VAT by 1%. I can tell
Look, we have done the simulations. We have done the simulations, but to conclude, it is better to do this than to carry the economy to the IMF. That we cannot do it. IMF, come and do it for us. It is better to do that, and that is why we are taking these steps. We want to exit the IMF program. And as a country, we must begin to implement some of these measures so that we will mobilize sufficient revenue to finance ourselves and not surrender the economic management of this country to the IMF as the NDC did.
But have you done any simulation in terms of the expected revenue from?
We have.
What are you hoping to realize from this review?
I don't have the figures here.
Round figure?
I don't have the figures here. I could give you an accurate figure as we proceed. But what we did was to consider an increase in VAT suggested during the stakeholder consultation. What we did was to weigh that against this and to come to the conclusion that this will lead to less hardship and that this will be less punitive.
Meanwhile, the Ghana Chamber of Commerce and Industry has also been reacting to some highlights of the media budget review. Joy Business has been speaking with the CEO of the chamber, Mark Bedu Abuaje, who analyzed some of the issues that came up.
The high point was the fact that taxes were not increased because already we are suffering from a very high cost of doing business. And we were all praying for that, although there were some speculations that taxes were going to be increased, which we actually expressed our displeasure about it. But the minister had actually confirmed that there are no increase in VAT and there are no increase in other taxes. So we are happy about that.
Okay, so that assurance has been cleared for you, that doubt has been cleared. But one of the main concerns faced private sector has also been the issue about the cedi, the depreciation of the cedi therein. The finance minister has described it as a marginal depreciation. He's saying that efforts are being made to shore it up. Are you convinced as, you know, an entire entity?
For me, marginal in terms of from the business sector will not be that marginal because 0.1% depreciation of the cedi is very huge for a business person that is rather either importing or exporting, or if you've gone for a loan and the cedi are depreciated by even 0.1, it's not marginal. It's a huge sum of money. The suggestion that is from the external factor is something that I don't really buy totally into it. We've not built the capacity of the private sector to be able to produce to support the cedi. For how long are we going to suffer from these external sectors? Because they always come about. How do we position ourselves as a country to be sure that the cedi is strong enough so that if these external pressures come along, we have a strong cedi that can also withstand this pressure. Beyond that, I think over the years, we've used short-term measures to stabilize this currency, and it's not helping us. Every year when it comes, either it's a syndicated loan that we are using or it's a euro bond that we are going for to support the cedi, or we are drawing down on our reserve. And for a short term, I think it's about time to look at for the long term, how do we make the cedi strong against the major trading currencies? And
So that was our interview of the day. Darryl, former finance minister, has been saying something on Twitter. What
yeah,
has
you know
he been
that
saying?
the minority has described this as an anti-business
Entirely,
budget. Well,
yeah.
the former finance minister on Twitter today said it is a VAT increase in disguise. Businesses should not rejoice yet because they cannot claim input tax credit or funds on 5% of the current 17.5% rate. Already the flat rate is denying some registered businesses refunds and input tax credit. I'm sure that in the coming days there will be plenty more talk about this.
Exactly.
Following from the finance minister's presentation of the media budget.
But we wrap up today on the show,
Yeah.
and it's been an interesting one.
Yes.
The media budget review edition of the Business
Yeah,
Live. My name is
Sandy had to host unhappy because a luxury car is going
not
to
my
be taxed.
Darryl. My
All
name
right,
is Sandra
guys.
Estina Mapeno.
My name is Darryl Carl. Thanks for watching.